Namaste, I'm Diksha Yadav, your host for What This Means, a Swarajya podcast show where we discuss news behind the news. Today, we have with us Professor Prasanna Tantri, and in this episode, we'll majorly focus on the RBI monetary policy and a bit about the budget. Namaste, Prasanna ji. Thank you for joining us.
Namaste, Diksha ji. It's a pleasure talking to you,
Yeah.
uh,
So,
and happy to be back. I think third time
yeah.
uh,
Yeah,
in a
and
month or
and I think
two
on a
nights.
positive note and a good note, uh,
Yeah,
with your bet on the overall budget expenditure and also the capex. But we'll get to
sure.
that point later. First, let's start with the RBI monetary policy that came in today. So,
Hmm.
25 basis, the rate cut. The lending cut is 25 basis points to
Right.
6.25%, right? So, two things. First, how do you see this? Second, is how late this has come, because of course it's first in 5 years, right? So how late this move has come, and thirdly, what do you think would have been the ideal rate cut? How many times more it should have been according to
Oh, you already anticipated what I'm going to say.
you?
But let me start with something positive. Always ranting, people may not like.
Yeah.
So, anyway, I think the direction is welcome, definitely.
Mhm.
5 years later, or whatever number of years, at least there has been some move. That is
Yeah.
positive.
Mhm.
More importantly, people should read the monetary policy statement or hear what the RBI governor says. At least, there is a line I saw, it was sort of music to my ears,
Mhm.
that they recognize the trade-off. They recognize that, when they make things tight, while it may help them on the inflation front, it will hurt on unemployment and, other areas. So at
Yeah.
least the RBI governor, the new governor, is talking of trade-off. I was so
Mhm.
delighted to see that, because we were behaving as if there is no trade-off at all.
Mhm.
Even if the entire world, all of us become unemployed, only thing we want to worry about is inflation expectation.
Yeah.
And this is the first time I actually saw the word trade-off, and they recognize that there is cost they are imposing when they make things difficult.
Yeah.
So that's very good news. But having said that, if you ask me how do I describe this, obviously my statement will be too little, too late, too
Okay.
late maybe,
Uh-huh.
right? And too little if you want to add. If my and my wish, okay, it's not my expectation. Expectation was this only,
Mhm.
rational expectation, given that what I think RBI would. In fact, I was fearing even this is not going to happen.
Okay.
That way, I'm happy. But my wish was, RBI the policy. There are two things people have to note.
Hmm.
One, they say their stance, and the other one is their what are the action policy. What is
Yeah.
stance? Stance is which way they are leaning in general, right?
Hmm.
So earlier they were in the process of withdrawal of accommodation. In simple language, they were in the tightening phase. Then the only thing to expect is higher rates or no change.
Hmm.
From there, they made it neutral. Neutral, as the name suggests, you never know which direction there. There is no directional change as
Mhm.
such. I was thinking that would become accommodative. That means the natural bias now will be downwards interest rate,
Okay.
and then sometime they will cut, sometime they'll say let's wait out, and
Mhm.
that's that. If they had said accommodative, that means you can expect a series of cuts.
Right.
Instead, they have kept it neutral.
Mhm.
I don't know if 5.4% is not enough. What they want to see, they want to see 3% or minus 2%,
Hmm.
or everybody other than people in RBI getting unemployed, or something to becoming accommodative. But still, they have not gone there. It's very, very disappointing to me. They should have first moved to accommodative.
Mhm.
Then, that means now they acknowledge that, look, growth needs to take precedence,
Hmm.
but they have not done. They've kept it neutral, but nevertheless, beggars cannot be choosers.
Hmm.
They have cut interest rate a little bit, which is happy. But so that's my answer to your second question of, has it come too late?
Hmm.
I think it has come too late, but it's fine. Let's take whatever has come.
Some movement, and
Yeah,
so you would guess that it should have been more than 25
of
basis
course.
points.
Just see the, and let me use their own logic, and let me see whether I'm making sense to your viewers.
Hmm.
They are projecting inflation next year is going to be 4.2%,
Yeah.
right? That is what they're
Hmm.
projecting now, right? And they are projecting growth is going to be
7.
6.7%.
Yeah. Yeah.
Economic survey says it is 6.3 or something.
NSO
Now,
is 6.4.
6.4 for this year.
Yeah.
This year is going to be 6.4. You remember the same RBI was saying 7.2.
Yeah.
Last year they kept interest rate high, saying growth is going to be 7.2. Just think about mechanically. If you are
Yeah.
using any mathematical model,
Hmm.
once you input 7.2, it should give you some interest rate.
Yeah.
If you input 6.4, it should give you much lower interest rate. They stuck with it for almost 3.5 months. Forget it. Anyway, that jo hua so hua.
Hmm.
Now they are saying, look, inflation is going to be 4.2%.
Yeah.
Now 4.2% and the interest rate they will charge now, the repo rate is 6.25%. But what you have to understand is that you and me don't borrow at repo rate.
Hmm.
You and me do not borrow at repo rate. What we borrow is at a rate where there is something called risk premium.
Hmm.
This is for 6.25 and all, it's risk free.
Hmm.
It's a rate at which people who don't default borrow.
Hmm.
Normal people borrow. When you add interest rate, you have to add risk premium.
Yeah.
What RBI completely ignores, this you will not even just Google for the or search for, not Google, search for the word risk premium in their document. You will not even find that word. It's crazy,
Okay.
right? What happens when interest rates go up? Risk premium also goes up.
Hmm.
So when they increase interest rate by 1%, you and me will end up paying interest rate more by 1.5%, not 1%.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if your inflation is 4.2, if you keep interest rate at 6.25, the real rate is not going to be 2.05. It's
Yeah.
going to be 2.5 or 3%.
Mm-hmm.
Now 2.5, 3% is contractionary.
Hmm.
When you're doing 2.5, 3%, you're saying there is too much demand, there is too much economic activity going
Hmm.
on, and we want to slow down the economy. Now, if is 6.7% growth too much activity in the economy? You think that
Yeah.
is way beyond our potential? Like you and me are eating so much that prices are going to go up.
Mm-hmm.
Then why on the other hand everyone wants consumption boost and all that?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't understand. And then
Hmm.
the other thing is, you remember you and me had a long chat last time, and I went on for a rant non-stop explaining what is this inflation expectation business.
Yeah.
What was the RBI's point? That why is inflation high? Inflation is high because vegetable prices have gone
Uh,
up. But that vegetable prices will lead Diksha ji to ask for higher wage from Swarajya, and before she asks for higher wage, let her make us unemployed.
hmm. Hmm.
This was their plan. Right? Now the question is, if you are so much worried about inflation expectation, tell me what is the inflation expectation now? You don't even,
Hmm.
there is no word on it.
Yeah.
They don't
Yeah.
have data on inflation. They do a survey.
So,
It's so silly. It says
yeah.
10%. Everybody says 10% inflation. Imagine if you go by that survey,
Yeah.
you and me are expecting an inflation of 10%. Okay. But the actual inflation is going to be 4.2%.
Hmm.
Why are we agreeing for a wage growth of just 4.2%? That will happen only if there is massive unemployment.
Hmm.
Suppose you expect 10% inflation. Then if you go to an employer, you will ask for at least 10% wage.
Yeah.
Do you agree? Suppose you expect 10% inflation and you are in a wage negotiation with Amar, or let's say you're talking to them, and then you will tell them, give me 10% more than last year because RBI says inflation expectation is 10%.
Yeah.
Now, when will Amar not able to give you 10%? Is when he has so many unemployed people standing outside. Right? There is a get lost. I don't care. If you are
Not a
not,
good example.
Amar will say, if not you, that
We
Professor
can't ask
Prasanna,
increments.
who was a faculty at ISB, he
Hmm.
is also unemployed. They have kicked him out. He is willing to write articles on economy. I don't. You go. Then you'll say, okay, then I'm okay with 4.2.
Yeah.
Right? What
Yeah.
RBI is saying, if expectation is 10%, actually is going to be 4.2. That is
Hmm.
possible only when there is massive unemployment.
Hmm.
But the government number says unemployment rate is 3.2%.
Hmm.
Which one I should believe now? Should I believe your inflation expectation? Should I believe your actual inflation?
Yeah.
Or should I believe if unemployment is massive, then you are making it cut interest rate by 2%.
Hmm.
If not, your inflation expectation number is wrong.
Employed.
Amar just
Yeah.
points out that this Prasanna has recently been fired by ISB. He was ranting nonsense against RBI. Right? And they got rid of him, and he's now calling Amar desperately through Arihant and all that for a job. And if Diksha is asking 10%, let's hire Prasanna. He'll do for 4.2, right? So if
Yeah.
you're in what I'm trying to say, also in a lighter way, is if your inflation expectation number is true, that it is 10%, and if your actual inflation is 4.2%, which means there is massive unemployment. But the
Yeah.
government number says that unemployment rate is 3.1%, which means one
Hmm.
of them is wrong. I think your inflation expectation number is totally wrong. It is totally, first thing RBI has to do before, raising interest rate or playing with interest rate to address onion prices, potato prices, and all that. Remember,
Hmm.
now
Hmm.
RBI also acknowledges all the inflation is because of potato, onion, palm oil, and all that. Is to
Hmm.
fix this inflation expectation number. Find out, we don't have time to get into how to do it. At least ask people who have done it elsewhere, how do we get inflation expectation right? Current inflation expectation, some of your viewers who are interested can get into RBI website. You will be shocked. It's a flat 10%. Inflation is
Hmm.
higher, then also it is 10%. Inflation is lower. They just put a mic on people's mouth and ask, what do you expect inflation to be? People find this 10% to be convenient. It
Hmm.
does not reflect true pricing. It is not that you will walk away from, the true expectation, Dikshaji, is when if Amar offers you anything less than that, you will walk away from Swarajya. That is what I want to know, right?
Hmm.
If that goes
Hmm.
up, then he will be forced to hike your wages. That will lead to Swarajya magazine becoming costly. That will lead to permanent inflation even after onion prices fall. Because once,
Hmm.
like your landlord, for instance, if your landlord now is going to say that unless you give me 10% more rent, I'm going to kick you out. Yeah, the
Yeah.
school says that for children, if you don't pay me higher fees, your child is not admitted. Once
Yeah.
onion prices have led to that, then there is justification for using interest rate as a tool to curb that.
Hmm.
Without even knowing that has happened, without even having data to assess, forget about knowing, they don't have data.
Yeah. Yeah.
Terrible data. Somebody, if you get to talk to RBI, you have to ask them if expectation is 10%, then actual is 4.2. This is both you are saying, and the government
Hmm.
unemployment is 3%. Can you please explain me how is this possible? All three together, right?
Yeah.
Something
Yeah.
is something is wrong. It doesn't
Yeah.
work out, right? So this, unfortunately, we are the fifth largest economy in the world, and this kind of lack of data is what we are suffering from. And we are making policy, and I have to say in so many words, Diksha ji, and I have these days I've completely stopped sugarcoating
Hmm.
and say where it is. The kind of papers they put out, the RBI papers. If my PhD student, first year PhD student, does that even for assignment, I'll fail the guy. That's the quality of paper.
But I mean,
That's the kind of paper.
what is the right way of doing it then? If you can
No,
just
no. So
briefly
there are,
tell us.
of course, first you have to take stock. So I'll tell you what is happening now.
Hmm.
Right way is to first you assess, find a way of figuring out. I'll give a simple thing. I am Ahmedabad has this center called Mishra Center.
Hmm.
Some professor and some RAs must be doing this. They do a survey of inflation expectation. You will
Hmm.
not believe they go and ask household and corporates. Their numbers are way better than RBI's. Way better than RBI's. At least get
Okay.
those I am Ahmedabad guys.
And what their data says?
You should talk to them once. Their data shows an inflation expectation of 4-5%, which is close
Okay.
to what. See, eventually you can't be expecting 10% and actual being 4%. The only
Hmm.
way that is possible if there is massive unemployment or there is a
Hmm.
massive decline in supply shock. The third component can be that if vegetable prices are down, oil price that is also not down, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So their numbers, in the short run, at least get those Mishra Center folks in Ahmedabad and
Hmm.
get their numbers. Then the survey that they are doing, that those numbers are better. But if you want the real answer, that's going to be hard work, which many people don't want to do. You have to go and figure out, what how do you figure out expectation. The best way is figure out there are many prices which are set in advance. Why is expectation important? When I said jokingly you negotiate with Amar, that is going to happen. When you negotiate with Amar next year's salary, you will anticipate inflation and ask for a hike. You,
Hmm.
you don't react to last year inflation. That's not what matters to you. So
Yeah.
you have to start measuring at what rate wages are going up, at what rate rents are going up, what rate
Hmm.
school fees is going up, at what all these prices which are set in advance in an economy, at what price they are going up. And once you have a sense of that, then you have a better measure of inflation expectation. Then you make a statement, oh, I am worried about vegetable prices because if vegetable prices remain high, Diksha ji will ask for a higher salary next year. And look, there are already signs of it.
Hmm.
Now you're just putting a mic on somebody's face and asking what your inflation expectation. The guy has no clue what are you talking about. He
Hmm.
randomly says 10%, and you justify that to keep interest rates high and make people unemployed. I think it's completely unjustified. And then you do it with the high forecast of 7.2% last year. And once it
Hmm.
becomes 6.6%, you behave as if, not even 6.6. RBI said after 7.2, 6.6. Now, conveniently, it's become 6.4.
Hmm.
Look,
Hmm. Yeah.
almost a percent lower, and we don't know, it may be 6.2 also eventually. It is still a forecast, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
RBI should accept that we have costed the economy 1% growth, and we have prevented Diksha ji from asking 10% salary hike from Amar. You know, without even knowing,
You're
right?
closing our doors for asking for
Right,
increment.
right. this is
Uh,
this is what they should accept, that without even being able to measure. The first thing I would suggest, even before talking about supply shock, please figure out a way of measuring inflation expectation.
hmm.
If you don't do it, then don't use it. you know
Hmm.
that's my response. So
Yeah.
cut even more. If you don't have data, at least support growth.
Right.
don't
Right.
don't use something for
So,
which you don't have good data. Sorry.
the two things that happened, one is the tax rebates which were introduced in the budget and this rate cut now. What do you think, like a year from now, say at the same time next year, what kind of economic push these both steps are going to
I think it will
give?
prevent things from becoming worse, which was becoming. That much I am reasonably confident. Otherwise, with the same kind of interest rate, but interest rate, they have not changed the stance, Dikshaji, which means you can't say that
Hmm.
they'll cut again. If that change the stance to accommodative, then I would be reasonably confident to say that this was just the
Hmm.
beginning. They will cut another 25, another maybe they'll cut 1% throughout the year. With this
Yeah.
neutral stance, I don't know. So
Hmm.
125 basis point is not going to make any difference.
Hmm.
See, you have to remember, monetary policy, interest rate is not like an injection. You gave it today and tomorrow it will start working.
Hmm.
Milton Friedman's immortal words. It works with long and variable lags. Monetary policy works with long and variable lags. It takes 2-3 quarters to flow into the system. In
Yeah.
fact, we are still experiencing the side effects of high interest rate. That itself is playing out, and it is
Hmm.
still
Hmm.
playing out. Even if they cut rates today, another 2 quarters, nothing is going to change. It will still suffer the high interest rate of the previous regime, and then the good things will come. So
Right.
it's going to take at least couple of quarters. It's not going to happen tomorrow. And there
Ah.
also, if you delay, and that's why I'm saying things won't become worse. While
Hmm.
I'm
Hmm.
happy with directional change, but I'm
Hmm.
not going to jump around and say that Viksit Bharat ho gaya and all of that. Right? That is not
Yeah.
happening.
So actually, so ideally, rate cut also like kind of help people to, go ahead and buy houses, those who wanted to buy and things like that. So do you see that that kind of impact this rate cut will bring? Because
No,
so
it's
far, I don't
too
think.
short. No, it is too less. 25 basis point is not going to change your decision. And for
Hmm.
your interest rate to come down by 25 basis point, as I've said, it's going to take time. It
Time,
will
yeah.
happen after maybe 2-3 quarters, right? And then
So,
it won't change
but
your decision dramatically, right?
hmm.
It won't change
Hmm.
anything dramatically. It
Hmm.
will take some time. I think they have to cut more. If they cut more,
And
yes.
Uh, on the other hand, we see that the real estate prices are also too pricey. So, do you think even if it was a little more, say, rate cut, would have had any impact? I mean, how much is the whole real estate sector responsible for this price hike?
No, no, the real estate prices, real estate prices have not fallen. That's prices don't fall. Imagine when they had increased interest rate.
Hmm.
If the house prices had fallen because
Hmm.
demand goes down, then there is no problem. You keep whatever rate you want. If the house price falls, the reality of the real estate market is that
Hmm.
prices don't fall that quickly. Because
Hmm.
prices
Hmm.
don't fall when the interest rates are high, you and me are not able to buy houses. Now that when
Right.
you give us, if you give us this again and again, I repeat, this 25 basis point is not a big deal. It is not
Hmm.
going to
Hmm.
change anybody's decision, not much. To
Hmm.
expect anything dramatic from 25 basis point is totally wrong. And this is, by the time this translates to you and me, our interest rate will take time. It is not going to happen tomorrow. We are
Yeah.
still going through the tightening cycle, right? But hopefully, let's say they make it more. They make it 50
Hmm.
basis point. They make it 75 basis point. Or
Hmm.
my hope is a 1%.
Hmm.
then it will translate into significantly lower interest rate. And then with the same income, you will be able to pay higher EMIs. You can buy houses. Although
Hmm.
the price of real estate, as I said, it's not going to immediately increase. So you will be able to
Hmm.
buy, and people will be able to buy houses and other durables where they use on EMIs, vehicles, and all of that will go up. But provided they make it accommodative. With this 25 basis point, don't expect any magic.
So, concluding on the RBI monetary policy, two things. One is they need to significantly, look
Dramatically.
into look into the how they calculate the whole inflation thing, whether it's food inflation or the overall inflation. And the second would be that they should continue with the rate cuts,
Significantly
maybe
more.
in the.
Yeah, to summarize, they should have a better way of measuring inflation expectation. That is what my
Hmm.
point is. Until you have it, because right now they are keeping interest rate high because expecting that people are expecting inflation. If you
Hmm.
don't know what people are, and you can't put a mic and measure expected, that's a very bad way. And because they, according to them, it is
Yeah.
10%. Then
Hmm.
they have to explain if people are expecting 10%, why is it actual 4.2%? They're projecting 4.2%. Either
Hmm.
explain
Hmm.
it or admit that your data is wrong and correct. At least get those I am Ahmedabad folks. That's what I'm
Hmm.
saying, right? And the
Yeah.
other thing, Diksha ji, a bigger point in monetary policy is you should at least at some time they should ask this question. This is where the
Hmm.
problem is. Let's say PM Modi or FM asks her advisors or bureaucracy saying this whole inflation targeting whether it is working or not is
Hmm.
what will what they do. This is where I said this first year kind of papers. They will draw a graph. What was the
Hmm.
inflation before inflation targeting came in? And they'll show it was all 12%, 15% during UPA time. Now it is
Hmm.
all 6%, 7% under
Yes.
Modi ji and the current finance minister. And say, look, this is all because of RBI.
Hmm.
No, the truth is, this is mostly because of the government itself. Even if there was no inflation targeting, this
Hmm.
government was so disciplined that they have not splurged money. They have not
Yeah.
thrown money at the problem. Inflation would have come down anyway. The real test of inflation targeting? The real test of inflation targeting is you should be able to bring down inflation
Hmm.
without causing a significant decline in growth.
Right.
If you
Right.
are able to do
Yes.
that, then you have done magic. Why?
Yes.
Because the whole idea of inflation targeting is credibility.
Hmm.
Because look, now I have a RBI. If tomorrow you have a UPA two like government, which is going
Hmm.
to splurge and all kinds of cronyism, lending and all, if that happens, here is RBI with this inflation targeting mandate, which will increase interest rates and not let government to do money. This is
Hmm.
the goal. That means even if there is a onion price hike, potato price up, people should be so confident that we have a very credible institution that should not lead to inflation expectation. Now, what is
Yeah.
funny is the RBI governor says, "Oh, I am worried that potato prices will lead to inflation expectation," which means you are
Hmm.
admitting that your new framework of inflation targeting, because it's not new now, it's come on, 9 years.
Hmm.
Paul Walker, people have this wrong notion of Paul Walker. He initially increased
Hmm.
interest rate, but once he won the war against inflation, for next 30 years there was no inflation expectation in the US. Even when crude went to $154 in 2007, there was no inflation expectation in the US because they trusted the Fed. Now
Hmm.
here you should have gained that trust. So if how it is not that by making more people unemployed, if you are bringing down inflation, then why do you need this framework? This
Yeah.
whole idea of this and this is sad. The problem is even after hearing this, suppose if the I don't know whether FM will hear this, someone will hear this. Suppose they call their people and tell them should we review the inflation
Yeah.
targeting framework.
Hmm.
Immediately a graph will be shown to them saying, look, inflation was to be high before, after this it is low,
Hmm.
and you don't touch with this. If you touch, then inflation is no. This is because of FM herself, inflation going down. She has been disciplined.
Hmm.
It's not
Hmm.
RBI.
Right.
if
Right.
if you have a disciplined FM, inflation will go down. She is unnecessarily giving credit to RBI when the credit should go to the FM. But the whole economic apparatus around the FM will convince her that look, oh, if you abandon this framework, no, they have this framework has achieved nothing. I have a paper on
Hmm.
this. I have investigated seriously. they have not been able to bring down expectation. They are
Hmm.
using this blunt tool of interest rate, making people unemployed, bringing down growth to bring down inflation bring down inflation expectation and bring down inflation. That you can do anyway. Why do you need this targeting framework?
Yeah.
Any
Yeah.
country, anywhere you can do this, right? So
Right.
the other big thing they have to do is that if you cannot measure expectation, at least don't do this framework. This is causing
Hmm.
damage. First,
Hmm.
get the infrastructure. Before you even employ some new system, right? Don't you need an infrastructure? Suppose you have a studio and you don't
Yeah.
have electricity. You bring in a new equipment without electricity, and then say equipment is not working. Why will it work? And you
Hmm.
need people
Hmm.
to know that how to operate that equipment also, right? And
Yes.
if you have people who write papers which are like first year PhD students reject fail papers, and based on that they claim that inflation expectation. I can't express my frustration, Diksha, when I read those papers.
Yeah.
I will not even give 1 out of 10 if somebody submits as part of their exam or
Hmm.
thesis or something. That's the kind of papers that are getting used to shape your and my life. Remember, Diksha,
Hmm. Hmm.
these my papers that I write will have no impact. Nobody cares. These kind of
Yeah.
papers which are wrong, which are
But
they are being used to prevent you from asking 10% hike from Amar.
uh, yeah, this is like a serious problem, and
Very
I
serious
hope.
problem. They need to get, if for cricket coach, if you get foreign coaches, why not get some good trained people in RBI? No, if
Hmm.
they are not
Hmm.
available here, get from abroad.
But this loophole is also not much talked about, like how we saw with the whole, frustration over budget that led to this kind of budget we saw this time. So, regarding this RBI's inflation measurement flaws or things like that, it's not so much, it's not so much comprehensible to the general public that they will understand and they'll question the government on this or the, that
Absolutely,
why
it's
it's
not
being.
general public's fault at all. I'm not blaming
Hmm.
general.
Hmm. Hmm.
General public will know eventually that why are things not improving, and someday they will question, but that will take time. But
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
problem is, even if forget general public, even if FM tomorrow thinks that this there is a problem with this inflation targeting, she will be given this data. I'm telling you.
Hmm. Hmm.
I can
Hmm.
actually imagine somebody going to her and telling, no, this is worked. This is not worked
Yeah.
because of RBI, it's worked because of the FM herself. In fact,
Right.
the FM should claim credit for reducing inflation, not RBI. RBI is used blunt tool. We if see RBI success would be, there is a way to measure RBI success. What is RBI success?
Hmm.
Tomorrow, even if crude price goes up, even if vegetable price goes up, even if oil price goes up, if you don't have wages going up, if you don't have inflation, because people know this is so credible RBI, or even if tomorrow government runs a deficit, because
Hmm.
people's expectation is anchored. This is called anchored
Yeah.
expectation, right? Because you are not going to go to Amar and ask for a 10% hike next year just because this year onion prices are high. You know that
Hmm.
next year onion prices are not going to go up, and government is not going to splurge, and because RBI is sitting there. If that is
Hmm.
happening, that is RBI's victory.
Right.
If after
Right.
10 years also, when tomato price goes up randomly, if RBI has to keep rates high, then that
Hmm.
is not the purpose of this. That is not anchoring expectation. If they are
Hmm.
worried that one tomato price going up is going to change all wages and expectation, then
Hmm.
when will you anchor? 10 years are over, another 20 years. How many
Hmm.
years you need? And how many years we have to suffer 6% growth?
Right.
It's going to be less, right? So when will Diksha have a upper hand in the bargaining game with Amar? And if Amar doesn't give a hike and Diksha says, get lost, I have other three factories. Professor Tantri and I are starting a magazine and we will start new one. We don't care. When will that situation going to come?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That RBI is coming, by so this is a so the inflation reduction. So it's not the problem of public. It is not. I don't blame the politician. Why should politicians know all these
Hmm.
technical details? They will not
Hmm.
know.
Hmm.
But then
Hmm.
the problem is, people who want to tell them, they should have people who know. That is what I'm saying. If you
Yeah.
don't find good enough people here, get people from abroad.
Right.
Get
Right.
them from abroad who know. And if you think that Indians coming from abroad will create nuisance and they become political, get non-Indians. This is a
Hmm.
technical issue.
Hmm.
Like, you get engineers, get macro. See, I'm not a macroeconomist. I'm a finance guy. right?
Hmm.
They are very good trained macroeconomists. Get them. They
Yeah.
will tell you how to, how this system works.
Interesting. And so let's move on to budget. And it's just one question that I have, and that is the two things that you mentioned, or say, let's take the three things that the consumption, saving, investments, and production. If you have to look at that, then with this budget announcement, there was something for every, like each of these, right? Consumption, investments, and also for the production. They did introduce things for the MSMEs. Investments also, when we talk about this alternative investment funds, they brought it into the capital gains instead of the business gains. So little bit of things we have seen, but how do you see the overall, say, in these aspects, how do you see the budget in all these four factors, and what's your you know uh,
Yeah,
what do you think
I
can be
think
done
I
more?
think see, budget is a statement of account, right? You
Hmm.
don't expect all policy decisions happening in the budget, right? Budget
Hmm.
is like
Hmm.
income, expenditure, and for example, our number one request was reforms.
Hmm.
You see that can happen outside the budget also.
Yeah.
From that way, I didn't see any significant reforms other than
Hmm.
say FDI in insurance. There was an announcement on a committee to look at regulations. So that
Yeah.
I think if you ask me if it implemented, that is the biggest thing. If there is a
Okay.
genuine, but then if the same guys, my worry is the guys who are messing up with regulation, they will only fall. Why will they
Uh,
change? This is the problem, no? You need Elon Musk.
yeah.
What the reason it will move with, I feel sad. People will start giving galis to me and little bit to you also. Ki, oh, Modi ji has also done Dodge and all that. It's different.
Hmm.
You need somebody from outside and disrupt. If you have a committee of same people who are now strangling the economy
Hmm.
to tell
Hmm.
you how
Hmm.
to de-strangle, they will de-strangle further. you know
Right. Right.
while I like the intention, but I have to see who's going to do this, right?
Yeah.
This identifying difficulties of regulation, because
Hmm.
the problem with these guys, right, when they give on one hand, they'll take, you said consumption, right? I love
Hmm.
the tax cut, but they have not reduced tax target, Diksha ji. You remember I said
Hmm.
the worst
Yeah.
thing will be make a tax cut but don't reduce tax
Tax.
target. Now that is my fear.
Yeah.
If you don't reduce tax target, now cut tax rates, then how will you collect the same amount?
Yeah.
For
The
fooling,
extra.
for fooling public, you can use terms like laugher. Remember, moment you hear these very complicated terms to justify something, it is just most of the time it's fooling around, right?
Hmm.
So I hope it's just a cosmetic exercise. They just didn't want to annoy states because states are going to lose out, and that is why
Mm-hmm.
they kept the target that much. But if they seriously think that this much of tax cut is not going to lead to any revenue loss at all, then I am worried, because
Hmm.
then suppose if Diksha is their tax collector, they will tell Diksha lower rate, now go and collect the same amount. Now she
Hmm.
will start issuing notice after notice. The same caramel thing will
Yeah.
be out. Now in salt also you will start looking high quality salt, low quality salt, what kind of sugar you're putting, and you will have
Yeah.
20 rates. So while I like tax cut, it's very clean, it's very bold and very nice, but I
Hmm.
I seriously fear the target.
Hmm.
So instead, they should have shown a lower expenditure. Some of the expenditure numbers they have. So they have an item, for instance, 4,29,000 crore they're going to give to states for capex.
Hmm. Hmm.
Last year they could not give 1 lakh. Last year they said they'll give 3 lakh 90, ended up giving 2 lakh 80, 2 lakh 90 something. This year they think they're going to give 1 lakh 40,000 crore more. There are
Hmm.
actual capacities issues on the ground. I don't think they're
Hmm.
so. Reason I'm not that worried is I don't think they'll be able to spend even this 50 lakh
Right.
60,000 crore. So therefore
Yeah.
they don't have to torture you and me to collect more taxes.
Taxes.
Therefore
Yeah.
this tax cut is likely to be real, and therefore
Hmm.
you will have higher disposable income and you will be better off. So, but then I don't know. Things can go wrong also. And on investment front, FDI was a good plus.
Hmm.
There was a discussion of nuclear power. Uh,
Hmm. Yes.
we need 500 gigawatts of extra, capacity to come in,
Hmm.
and there was, talk of, 100 gigawatt coming out of nuclear power. That I think is a great
Hmm.
idea. On MSME, it's the same old thing, doing more of bad things which have not worked. Hopefully, in some time they'll wake up. This model of giving guarantee and giving credit to guarantee is a disaster. We have discussed several times. They have made more of it.
Hmm.
So just forcing banks to give credit to MSME under some guarantee scheme is a recipe for disaster. I think they will wake up only after the disaster is obvious. So that's a bad part. If you ask me what is the single most bad thing about the budget, is this SME thing. Look,
They have kind of doubled, right? They have done
right.
like made it 2x for the.
That's the beauty of government, right? If something fails, they can do more of it. You know, because they can tax and in your suppose you start a new column in Swarajya and nobody's reading it, and then somebody will start questioning you. You'll have to dump it. In
Hmm.
government, you can have two such columns. That's the beauty of government, right? And then there are people who will justify that also. There's a good part you will find economists justifying. The funny part is a lot of people who are justifying capex and higher taxes have suddenly now become low tax is
So,
good.
what is the flaw of, say, suppose now if it's increased to 5 crores to 10 crores for,
The flaw
small
is simple,
businesses?
right? So, see, look, credit should. What is the problem in India with SMEs? The big problem is we have too many too small firms,
Hmm.
and the rest of the firms are very large. We do not have high growth small firms. There is a amazing paper in the Quarterly Journal of Economics. I forgot the name of the authors, which show that if a small firm starts in India, US, and Mexico at the
Hmm.
same time, after a certain number of years, I again forget the number of years, a
Hmm.
US firm is likely to be 8 times larger than the Indian firm. Even the Mexican
Okay.
firm is twice as large as Indian firm. Our
Hmm.
people, we have policies which incentivize small firms to remain small and inefficient. For instance, if they hire more than 100 workers, we'll say labor law. you
Hmm.
know Now you to inspector will come, you have to bribe that guy also, right? If
Yeah.
you grow
Yeah.
more than some plant and machinery, if you invest, then you don't get priority sector credit.
Hmm.
Until then I'll get you credit, but if you then you don't get guarantee. So we
Hmm.
incentivize firms remaining small, and then we cry, why are they small?
Hmm.
Ideal, if you want to support firm, you have to let credit flow to most efficient users of credit. Everyone need not be
Right.
an entrepreneur. Some
Hmm.
people will start firm, they will fail, let them fail, they'll become employees somewhere. Haven't we had failures in life? Haven't you
Yeah.
tried something and not failed, and haven't you done something else in life? All of us have gone through that. And let some small firms fail.
Hmm.
And the if at all you want to support credit, you have to give it to those who are growing, who will grow well,
Right.
innovative
Hmm.
ones. If you want to support them.
Hmm.
Supporting
Hmm.
small inefficient. There was a chapter in the economic survey, which actually argued for this. This dwarf, these guys, these 40-50 year old firms which have not grown at all, they are not,
Hmm.
they're inefficiently using resources. So we have to
Right.
understand, how do you allocate credit to those who use well. Now, what
Hmm.
guarantee does is that it removes that incentive in the hands of bank. Bank need not worry about it. Bank will say, look, I take
Yeah.
2%. There is this CGTMSE. This guy defaults. I'm going to get insurance. Why should I bother?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
then
Hmm.
the worst part is, if too many people default, then
Yeah.
insurance will be in trouble. Who owns this insurance? Government. It will hit
Hmm.
their budget. Then they will pressurize banks either to have a forcible, forced recovery, or
Yeah.
to give another loan. This is what UPA did. Eventually,
Hmm.
you'll have to do that. You will sort of close your eyes when banks start giving more loans to repay old loans. This is called evergreening.
Hmm.
In fact,
Hmm.
under UPA, they had an explicit policy. You can restructure loans and don't call NPA. That means I give a loan. So
Hmm.
tomorrow, if you, let's say you are not able to pay, what should have happened ideally? It should become an NPA. My capital goes down, and then I
Hmm.
claim this insurance from the government. Now,
Hmm.
government is not able to pay insurance. What do? You say, a bank, just give another loan to Diksha or restructure her loan. Now I
Hmm.
don't have to
Hmm.
call it an NPA. So fine, I give. That is how Malia got loan and everybody got loans.
Hmm.
Eventually, this
Hmm.
will lead to that only. See, banking goes through 10-year cycle. Exactly this reason. You do more and more of this guarantee, mudra, and all of this, and it will build up. And then the banks will show 2% NPA, 3% NPA. In reality, they have 10 to 15% are gone cases there, and
Yeah.
suddenly
Yeah.
one fine day you'll have a big. crisis,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
then poor guy, whoever is the FM at that time, will be blamed.
Okay.
You know,
So
that is.
this was new to me because I was thinking, okay, MSME guys
No,
are finally
I think
happy.
MSME guys are fine. They are happy. Current.
Uh,
See, we are not here to. The policy is not to make incentivize those who don't innovate and put effort. See,
hmm. Hmm.
welfare is different. If somebody is not having food to eat, somebody is disabled, someone is discriminated, give
Hmm.
some any freebie you want. I don't mind. They have to survive. That doesn't
Hmm.
mean that anything small is great and then remain like this.
Hmm.
See,
Hmm.
I'm not against it. All that I'm saying is hoping for some magic with this guarantee. If it has not worked for 60 years, 70 years, why will it work now?
Yeah. True.
Don't you think, you have to, so remove this guarantee and have a scheme where banks are incentivized to lend to high growth, based on
Hmm.
your growth. In fact, I
Yeah.
would lend more to those who grow more,
Hmm. Hmm.
not to those who grow less.
Yeah.
Others will collapse, let them collapse, they'll become employees here.
Yes.
Most of us work in private sector. No, what guarantee we have, Diksha ji?
True.
Go and
Performance based.
ask Amar for a 25% hike. You will realize what I'm talking about.
You'll not see me then hosting.
Right?
S-
So that's the
yeah.
life. That's the reality of life. Doesn't mean we can't do anything. This whole idea of
Yeah.
protecting everybody is not going to work.
Hmm. Hmm.
So this
Or maybe to a, that, like you said, it can be a time based, right? You gave them, but it didn't perform. You don't give them further.
yes, and see, there is a good scheme in agriculture called interest subvention.
Hmm.
Interest subvention is that if you repay, I will I will give you interest discount.
Hmm.
In waiver, what happens is, if in a debt waiver, that's a earlier style where I will, mafi complete.
Hmm.
Here there is no mafi. Here, if you repay, your interest rate is 7%. If you repay, I'll give it for 3%.
Hmm.
You can have
This
such a
is,
scheme. Why
yeah.
not?
Yeah.
That incentivizes performance.
Hmm.
Those who repay will get lower interest rate, right? and
Yes.
and
Yes.
and if RBI keeps interest rates high, at least do this, it won't cost much.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
also they have to look at, I've spoken about this in several places. Some of them who heard will feel bored, but there's one, or there are some government organizations sitting with money and not lending.
Hmm.
They have to also investigate why are they not lending.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and also that they should also look at, my expectation from at least next year budget is, all these flagship schemes you announce, right? You should
Hmm.
give an account of what is happening there.
Right.
Then we will know, then we will know what is going on. So
Hmm.
anyway,
Hmm.
so I think this SME thing is a disaster without mincing words.
Right. Yeah. And what about the jobs? Like, so finally, do you think these internship schemes and everything will work out in a good way?
I have
They
no
have
idea
increased.
how incentives, that internship scheme is getting implemented. I
Hmm.
think as an idea, it's a very good idea, right? So all kind of skill development, putting people in classroom has failed.
Hmm.
The whole idea is let them get into shop floor and let the kids pick up something, and let's see whether then they get employed.
Yeah.
I think the idea is very good, but we have. That's why I'm saying, if the scheme was announced last year, there is a
Hmm.
very good metric. The metric for that scheme is how many of those kids who get into this internship eventually
Hmm.
manage a job on their own.
Yeah.
Metric
Yeah.
for this scheme. There is not giving intern. You can force people to give internship, but
Hmm.
after
Hmm.
your internship, what proportion are able to manage a job?
Hmm. Hmm.
If you show me that number is decent, then it has worked,
Hmm. Hmm.
right?
So
And
it's
that
been a
figure,
1 year. I think we will hear such stories maybe later, it's been a year. Right now, what they have put out
you
is
hear
that
stories on.
uh
Diksha, that is my worry. You're. I don't know whether you're saying this sarcastically or, you know, I'm
no,
saying
I mean they just announced last year. So the data that they have put out is like 1.6 lakh
that
students
is intense. Intense.
apply,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, internship. So once the internship is also of 12 months, right?
Yes.
So
No, no, that's correct. No, no, but then there are some states which are running it. For example,
hmm.
see,
Madhya Pradesh you had
Samao Yojana.
mentioned.
There's
Yeah.
some 10,000 people who have done. We have to
Hmm.
understand how many of them
Hmm.
have eventually managed a job in the private sector.
Yeah.
Now, the reason we need to know, see, I'm not saying give it to Diksha and Prasanna, keep it yourself. But at least
Hmm.
if it is not happening, then you know what is going wrong and you can fix
Hmm.
it,
Hmm. Yes. Yes.
right? So
Yeah.
ideally way this should have been done through a pilot program. Take 10,000 people first, not 1.5 or 2 lakh. Take 10,000, whatever 5,000. Make this 1 year, and then see how many of them get jobs. If they're not getting jobs, why are they not getting jobs? And
Hmm.
then scale it up.
Hmm.
So what has happened in this scheme is suddenly you have this 1 lakh crore and 1.5 lakh people. Now there is people in that ministry are under pressure to get jobs to these 1.5 lakh.
Hmm.
They will
Hmm.
call Swarajya. So, you are happy that you are not top 500. Imagine Swarajya was top 500. You had to take 2,000. Imagine if somebody calls you and says, takes, take, so here Amar will be in trouble. They will not call. Someone calls Amar and says, take 1,000 interns. What will you do
Yeah.
with them? You
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
space to seat 1,000 interns.
And then to train them.
Then you train them. Then when will you do your work?
Hmm.
So these things should have been tested with some 5,000 people or 10,000 people,
Hmm.
and then or at least the Madhya Pradesh thing should have been studied carefully.
Yes.
What has
Yes.
happened there, and that will tell you, I'm sure it would have worked, some it wouldn't have worked. Then
Hmm.
the idea is very good. I think I really like the idea. Instead of making,
Hmm.
as a professor, I'll tell you, you don't learn much in classroom. You learn
Hmm.
more in the actual shop floor,
On the job.
on
Yeah.
the job. It's a great idea. I really appreciate, fact that they've introduced. But every time we should not have this. I understand with GST demonetization, it's the same thing. First let's jump in and then we'll figure out.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
That
Hmm.
should not be the way to operate. I understand it's, but in this case, why should everywhere first you should have teething issues, troubles. Sometimes then you abandon in that case.
Hmm. Hmm.
You may abandon a great idea because of implementation issues. I think this idea is
Yeah.
great. This should have
Yeah.
been reversed. I think the full-fledged Siko Kamao Yojana or Pradhan Mantri Yojana should have come 3 years later.
Hmm. 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 Hmm.
With all the learning from these pilots, then we are
Yeah.
launching a full-fledged. Now I know how many
Yes.
Diksha can take, how many some other people can take, because we
Yeah.
know the issues, and then it would work well.
Yeah, I think one, this is also like two things that people are complaining is one, the reforms part, right? The structural reforms that they expect even with the RBI and the government. And second is this update on what has like all these schemes, how they have benefited. So let's see. We have again done a long conversation, but it was very interesting. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Prasanna ji.
Thank you. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in. If you're listening to this episode on Spotify, do follow and rate the show. I'm your host, Diksha, signing off. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.